Welcome to Squatchin Holler.
In the mist where the trees lean low, Squatchin Holler's got a tale to show. Whispers creep like a creature's faint howl. Every shadow's got a secret to growl. Monsters rise where the stories are told. Squatchin Holler where the legends are born. Are they here? Are they gone? Who can say? In the holler, the truth just slips away. Huge footprints fade where the creek runs thin. A lantern sways, let the search begin. Rustling leaves, but there's no one near. Is it the wind or the beast you fear? Every echo's a question, every rustle's a clue. Squatchin Holler's got its eyes on you. Monsters rise where the stories are torn. Squatchin Holler where the legends are born. Are they here? Are they gone? Who can say?
And now, with your Squatchin Holler hosts, Roger Williams, Amanda Stowers, and Ashley Range. Remember, this podcast can be downloaded everywhere great podcasts are found. And now the show.
Well, we made it to 2026, y'all.
Hey, we made
Amanda.
it. Hey.
Look, I don't know how you do it, Amanda, but your video clears up when the show goes live.
Hey, I'll take it. You know what? I'll take it.
The gremlins are on our side tonight. So
everybody, again, I'll take it after surviving 2025. I'll take whatever I can get.
Absolutely. It's, oh man, you know, you have good stuff happen, and the older we get, you know, things happen. We have things going on now, and it's nice to get together and meet with friends. And, you know, we all lost quite a few people last year. Some of our personal Bigfoot family group and some of the big names. And, you know, just the fact that we've made it here and doing well is such a blessing. So I'm glad to see everybody.
Me too. And speaking of everybody, we're only like less than a minute in, and like our chat is already blowing up. So thank you everybody for joining in with us tonight.
Well, it's the power of the beard, y'all. We have Greg Howse on. He was one of our guests for our first show on Untold Radio Network, and Kumbo and Greg bring the viewers. And I wanted to start out with a bang, but I knew we would want Greg on by himself. But the thing about him, you know, we could do 3 parts of this, 2 hours, and still not touch the surface of things that have happened to him. And y'all, for y'all that don't know, that didn't watch the old Squatchin Holler, and, you know, Greg is co-host of Woodwalkerz, and him and Misty, we call her Squirrel. They do a Night Owls every now and then. It's more of a laid back place for people to come, you know, talk and have fun, tell life stories. And it's just the people that come watch become like family. Y'all hear that a lot. But I'm going to set Greg up here. Greg's not a researcher. For y'all, you guys that are listening, there are people all over the world that are not researchers. They have been thrown into this subject because of where they live. We have several in chat. We have visited their places, and they're legit. And, you know, Peyton and I, we're going down there tomorrow. I just told him right before the show, hey, you know, we're coming down in the morning. So
surprise,
Greg. but we've become like family, and I'm just glad I didn't know him when I was 17. We'd been in trouble, but he's just an hour and a half south of me, and you know, people that visit his area, he has some rules, which I don't blame him. We don't hoop and holler and beat on trees and do anything. We just sit on the back porch, or we'll go to the fields or whatever. I found evidence on 2 trips. Some of the first tracks I ever found was just behind the man cave down at the river, and I was shocked. I mean, I was absolutely stunned, and I thank him for doing that, and we wanna leave recorders out, we wanna do that, but he says, "You're not stirring them up and then leaving me to live with them." So, we go by the rules.
See, I don't do that to him. That's not nice.
No, he yeah, and, you know, the stories you're about to hear, y'all, are legit. We've I just I we're lucky to have people like Greg to come on and share their stories. He's not trying to prove it to anybody. If people out there wanna make fun or whatever, go ahead, but we know, so you can't hurt us. Go somewhere else and try to hurt the other people. So we we kinda laugh when they come in here. But anyway, did you have a good Christmas and New Year's,
I
Amanda, before
did,
we get
yes.
started?
It was a wonderful New Year's, a great Christmas, family and everything got together. I got to see my nieces and nephews, and yeah, it was a good one this year. I'll take it for what it is. You know,
Good.
some's in the past ain't been that great, so this one was a good one, so I'll take it.
Oh, good. So, y'all, we're gonna bring the beard in. Mr. Howse, how you doing, sir?
Oh man, better than I deserve most of the time, but I kicking around. Just glad I
House is
made
in
it.
the house.
Yeah, finally the holidays are about over with, and everybody gets all anxious and wound up for the holidays. So I guess maybe things will start getting back to normal.
Yeah, and
That's
and
nice.
some people, normal was kinda wild, like you, and I know what for the people that don't know Greg, Greg has, been in law enforcement, an elected law enforcement official, fire department volunteer, he helps people out, and having issues, 25, 26 years ago now, and one of my favorite stories is one of the first ones because he had things happening, sounds and all this stuff going on, and then when he first finally, saw the first one for the first time, he took me to that area, and it's pretty incredible what this thing did, and, Greg, if you wanna, like, set up how it kinda got started and go into that, first sighting, because and what I love about it, y'all, and I know I'm talking a lot, we're gonna turn him loose, is how real and how, emotional he was the first time he got a confirmed sighting out in a clear daylight in the open, and it was kinda like a big relief, wasn't it, Greg?
Oh man, yeah, everything had festered up, Roger, to that point. I've told people just got give them a background. I live on the edge of a big national forest, and I mean I grew up in the woods. I mean hunting, fishing, doing. We done a little bit of trapping with commercial fish. I grew up on a farm. Outdoors was our life. Everything we did was outdoors, and I thought I'd seen everything to be seen, especially in North Alabama. And my cousin owned a lot of land. They had a timber company, or not a sawmill, not a timber. I guess you'd call it a timber company. They had a sawmill, and he had a land his dad had bought during the Great Depression and after, and then he passed away, and it left him, his mother, and his sister owning everything, and they had a lot of land. They had a lot of land in this county, and I grew up him being like an uncle to me, and just we're really, really, really close. But anyway, he had a parcel of land. It was surrounded by national forest land, and I'm talking about several thousand acres around it. And it was a small 40-acre tract that was private owned. That he owned, and it had been totally clear cut. They had clear cut everything up on the top of the ridge, and then you dropped off to the river, and on the slope, on account of the erosion, they don't cut the timber on the steep slopes that close to a river. Well, it left some hardwoods, and there was a couple of little deep hollows that left some hardwood, but everything else had been clear cut for several years, and it volunteer growth. It came back just like a jungle, and just anything from pines to any kind of hardwood you could name, vines, briars, just growed up mess. Well, I knew he had that property, and I got to thinking about it one day about how, on government land, you can't just go in there and plant green fields or food plots. But I got to thinking, there's a lot of deer in this area, and if I could take, lease that 40 acres from him, I could do a couple of green fields to hunt on, and I could draw a lot of deer off of the government land onto that private land. So I approached him about that property, and I said, won't you lease me that 40 acres down here? He said, son, I ain't leasing that to you. He said, you just hunt it you just treat it like it's yours. Said, you hunt it any way you want to. Anybody else asked, you just tell them that by gosh, you're in charge of it. And he said, I'll make sure ain't nobody else comes in there on you. Well, it was me and my dad was going to hunt it, and then my buddy Hal, he hunted with us a lot. So it was basically us three. Wanda hunted it very little. And that's my wife. But we got it set up. And the first year, we went in there, and I took Dad's bulldozer, which is now my dozer, but I cleared out some old skidder trails, and I built a road that went nearly all the way around this 40 acres, like a big loop. Where you went in the gate, it forked. One road went kind of straight out, and this one turned hard to the right, and it went off the mountain down toward the river. And I found a flat spot down there and put in about a half-acre green field. And the end of the green field was probably 200 or so feet from the edge of the water, or less, maybe 150 feet. But the other one, and think of like looking at a square box. One field was like in the top left corner, and the other field was in the bottom right corner. So it's kind of catty-cornered across. So I had it, kind of one on each edge spread apart. Well, we had planted those fields that fall. We planted them, and we had just all kind of wild game mix seeds that we planted, different grasses and broadleaf stuff. And the deer were absolutely wearing out these fields. I mean, they were keeping them eat down, tracks everywhere. And I thought, I was excited about first day of bow season. So Dad and I went down. He got in the upper field, called the upper field and lower field. I went to the lower field, got in the ladder stand. Dad was in the ladder stand in the upper field. About less than 10 minutes before it got dark. Now, look, for some reason, I did not know at that time, I had not seen a deer. I'm sitting here thinking, for 3 hours, it's going to be like a whole herd of deer wipe this field out, and I'm fixing to shoot something. And like I said, it was bow hunting. Didn't see a deer. I was severely let down. Well, then about 10 minutes before dark, right out the end of the field from where I'm at, the field from the tree stand was on the one end, and at that was the end away from the river. So I'm looking toward the end toward the river, and right out the end of the field, it couldn't have been 20, 25 yards out of the field. It sounds like Babe Ruth has went ballistic with a ball bat, and this thing hit a tree. And I'm talking about, it had to be, we got a bunch of beech trees, and the bark's real thin, and the trees are real hard. But it was like hardwood hitting hardwood. And this thing cracked like a rifle going off. It sounded like the wood should have been splintering. And it was just kapow, kapow, kapow. And it hit 3 times. And I'm like, what in the world is, I'm upset. I'm pissed. Because there's some a-hole down here is beating on a tree, and I'm in here deer hunting, and it's prime time. Anybody that deer hunts knows right at dark is when they're going to come out. Well, I'm sitting here, and I'm confused on who in the world is this, and why in the world are they on this property. And I sat there a few minutes, and I climbed down and, got all my stuff, climbed down out of the stand, and had to walk the little over 200 yards up this hill that's about this, angle to go back to the truck. Well, I get back to the truck. Dad comes out. I asked him, I said, did you see anything? He said, nope. He said, did you? I said, no, I didn't see anything. He said, well, I know why you didn't. Said, you down there beating on something. I said, you heard that. He said, good night. Said, it was echoing. Said, what in the world was you beating on? I said, it wasn't me beating on nothing. I said, there's some moron out here at the end of the field where I was sitting is beating on a tree. I said, I don't know who that is or what they're doing, but I'm fixing to find out. Well, the road that went into this property is about a mile long from the pavement. You follow a Forest Service road at dead ends. And we had a gate on the left side, and then the road, it got a lot smaller past that, and it was just really kind of like a log road. But it went down and dead ended at another small piece of property right on the river. Well, from where I was through the woods, it wouldn't have been over probably 400 yards to where this other property. And I told Dad, I said, they've got to be somebody down below us at the end of this road. So we get in my truck. Now, like I said, I'm not happy. I'm fixing to go have a come to Jesus meeting with whoever's beating on the damn tree, because I know they've got to be they're poaching over onto this property. And I couldn't figure out why, if they were poaching, why was they over here beating on the tree? Anyway, we got in my truck. I go down through there, and you go off it's a steep, rutted out road. So I put it in 4-wheel drive, and we crawling through these ruts and come down. And when it bottoms out at the end of this road, there's nobody. There's no vehicle. There's no nothing. Well, I knew that if somebody came in or out, they had to go right by my truck, and I could have heard them. Nothing. And, that confused me at that point, because I'm like, well, I don't know who this is, but how in the world did it get here? So we kind of let it go. And then that year, we had several times that we would hear tree knocks, and we'd hear, the main thing was tree knocks and whoops, and it'd be like WHOOP, whoop, and it'd be long and loud. And I've had these things whoop. They'd be within 50 feet of me or less. I've had them in the thicket way less than 50 feet, but the thicket was so thick you couldn't see 5 feet. They'd come in and whoop, and it'd be so loud it'd hurt your ears. And when they'd whoop like that, a lot of times you'd hear one somewhere else. It'd answer back, and they'd do the same thing with tree knocks. A lot of times the first tree knocks you heard would be really close to you, and then the reply, you'd hear it'd be a 3 knock to start with, the one that was close, and then the reply would be like, it sounded like it was quarter or half a mile away, but it would answer with 2. So it would start off with 3, and it'd always answer with 2. And I was trying to figure this out. I'm going, what in the world? Well, amongst this time, there was a guy that went to church with us. He was a night watchman at a mobile home plant, and he worked in one town over here and lived in a town over here. Well, as he was coming back, when his shift got off before daylight, he got off before daylight, the day shift come in, and this guy was in his 60s, super good guy. I mean, he wasn't like a big storyteller or nothing, but he had to come through this road. There's real sharp curves, and then you go up the hill, and then there's a road that cuts back to the log road I was talking about. That guy got scared to death because he come around one of those curves wee hours of the morning, and it was one of these things crossed the road in front of his pickup, and he got a real good look at it. And his buddy told me said when that happened, he like almost wrecked his truck trying to get home, got home, which is about 7 or 8 miles from here, went in the house, loaded his shotgun, and made sure all the doors was locked and didn't even want to come outside. It absolutely petrified him. Well, people had talked about that, and then I'd heard some more people, through the years talking about there was things in the woods that people didn't know about. One guy that's married into my family, his dad was a moonshiner, and he'd made the remark to several of my relatives, said that if people knew what was really in the woods around here, I'm talking about this guy lived within 2 miles of where I'm sitting. He said if people knew what he knew was in the woods around here, said they wouldn't even let their kids outside. Well, all this was, I'm getting little tidbits here and there, and you'd hear something every now and then from the area. And, I start trying to research. Well, we're talking about 2000, 2001. The internet wasn't really a thing. And, it's hard to find out anything. And I didn't know anybody that knew anything. But I mean, I'm trying to put it together, and then I get to reading that, that Bigfoot would knock on trees, that they would whoop, that they would scream, that they would do all this stuff. Well, in my mind, I'm going, surely not, because, Bigfoot's supposed to be closest Falk, Arkansas, at least on the other side of the Mississippi River, going Pacific Northwest. I couldn't make myself believe that that's what it was. Well, the first year, like I said, it was mostly, we did hear a few whistles. It was tree knocks, whoops, and whistles. And y'all, I've had these things walk through that thicket. You could hear a bipedal something coming, and it would walk through that old growed up cutover, which was 10, 12 foot high. And it sounded like it was just like breaking everything in front of it, like it didn't slow down. It would just walk and crunching like somebody walking down a paved road. It would just push its way through. And it may go like every 15, 20 yards, it would be just a monotone single whistle. And you could listen at the limbs breaking and the vines ripping, and it would whistle, and it would keep going. It'd get on up there and it'd whistle, and then go a little further and it'd whistle. And it would just be loud. I'm talking about a super loud monotone whistle. And, me and Dad were trying to figure out, it's like, what in the world is this down here? And, I'd asked Dad, I said, did you hear that? Yeah, that thing come down from down there where you was, and it come around behind my stand and went on over into that big timber. I said, so it crossed this whole 40 acres diagonal. And I said, was it whistling when it was up over you? He said, yeah, it whistled like every 15, 20 yards, it'd whistle. And then, like by the second year, they got to where you would come out of the stand and these things would follow you. You could hear them over in the thicket. When you'd walk, they'd walk. When you'd stop, they'd stop. And then we're still hearing all the other stuff is like year by year, they would throw something else. It's like building a pot of soup. We threw this in so long, then we have to add this. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Well, it got bad as far as, I finally got bluff charged, and that was the icing on the cake. Now I'm talking about that was when everything come to a head, and I realized I still hadn't saw one. And, I've been in a tree stand and I had a stick one day that was about that big around, as long as my leg, and it was shaped kind of like a boomerang. That thing come out of the wood line, and I could hear it clipping the pine trees, and it was clipping limbs. And then when it got out over the field, it went out at an arc and went like this and came down, and you could hear it going through the air going whoop, 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 whoop. And the thing, it went like 40 yards out in the field, hit the ground, and just kept bouncing and then fell over. I mean, we're talking about something, I'm not no little bitty dude. I'm 6'2" and about 220 pounds. There's no way in the world I could have thrown that thing probably 15 yards. But I don't know how far it went through the pine saplings before it ever cleared the edge of the field and kept going and then landed. I've been sitting in a tree stand. I've had people say, oh, they won't hit you. They won't hit you. They'll throw rocks and stuff at you, but they won't hit you. That's a bunch of crap, because I got hit one day. I was sitting in a stand, and when you're in a tree stand, you don't turn your head and look around. All you're doing is you're cutting your eyes. You're looking to the left or right, looking to the left. You're using your eyes. And I'm sitting there, and I got my rifle got the butt end of it on my leg and the barrel on the stand. And I'm just sitting there with my arms kind of folded. All of a sudden, there's something whizzes by my ear, and I get a glimpse of it flying out in the field, and I see it hit, and it bounces. Well, I just kind of like, what the hell? And here in just a few seconds, there's one hit me right here about where my collar is on my neck. The thing hits, and it bounces straight up, and it comes back down, and it lands on the receiver on the side plate of my Browning rifle. And it bounces back up on my chest and falls, and I catch it. And it was a hickory nut still in the big hole on the outside. But that thing had threw a hickory nut, and it hit me on the back of the neck and had enough force. It bounced and went straight up and then came back down. I caught it. Well, when it did that, I jerk around. I stand up and got my rifle. Y'all, the thing about it, where I was, there was not a hickory tree. I don't know where the closest hickory tree was. They had left about 4 or 5 little bitty trees. It was about this big around. And there was one that was just big enough to put my ladder stand on. So everything else, I'm in a 15-foot ladder stand. All this other clear cut is down about 12 or so feet high. So I'm actually above everything. I can see out across the top of everything, like looking across the top of a cornfield. And I'm standing, I've done looked around and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But, I tell them, I said, look, I'm one of the few people that's been hit by something they did throw. But I couldn't lay my eyes on it, even though I'd had all these huffs, grunts, growls. I've heard them breathe. I've had them come into my stand. It sounded like a racehorse that ran the Kentucky Derby. That thing would pull air in, and it was like, in my mind, it's like this thing sounded like it ought to be slobbering just because when it exhaled, just like his mouth was just super wet and slobbering, and it would just exhale. It sounded like you were squeezing a set of lungs this big, and you just keep blowing air out. And I've heard them cough. They cough just like a person, except a whole lot deeper and a whole lot longer. I've heard them do that. It's like they got strangled. It's kind of definitely some type of form of primate noise. But I've heard so much stuff, y'all, over the years. And by the time we got into it, I sent Roger a picture. And where I hunt now is about crowfly where that picture was taken of a footprint. That was in 2004. That picture right there. Now look, it was in the sand. It was in the sand where a little branch came through, and that thing had 5 toes, and it was a little over 16 inches long, best I can remember. And I think it was 9 inches across. I've got all that wrote down, y'all. Forgive me, it's 21 years ago or 26 years ago now, nearly. But that thing, the pictures, you can tell right there, maybe, I had to take that with a Polaroid. I'm not a professional photographer. I was doing everything I could, and where it's kind of yellow outlined on the track to make it show up better, I reached up on the bank and pulled some fern stems, and I stripped the leaves and just kind of outlined it as straight and pretty as I could to show the size of the track. But even that, I still couldn't see one of the things. So I was to the point, this has got to be what it is. But I'm in North Alabama. There ain't no Bigfoot in North Alabama, even though I done been living through all this stuff for years. But when all that came to a head was in January the 29th of 2009, when I did have my first sighting. That's when it all mustered up. That's when I saw the one that crossed the road in broad daylight.
When we've rode that we've been on that road a few times, and I remember you telling the story when you finally saw it, and all of that, those encounters, and you kind of thinking it might be this, you finding tracks, and when you saw it, it had to be such a relief. I know you said you beat the steering wheel and kind of cussed it a little bit, like I see you.
Yeah, I do. I was driving with left hand. I grabbed the steering wheel and pulled myself up nearly in the windshield, and I was screaming at the windshield, "I see you, SOB, I see you." And I've said that about 4 times over and over. Y'all, that thing stepped out. I come around this little bit of a curve, gradual to the right, and it kind of tops over a little bit of a rise. When you top that rise, you got a straightaway that's 300 yards long or so. I need to measure it. It's a pretty long straightaway. Yeah, and it's far into the straightaway. The road makes a real sharp turn to the left. Well, right where it starts banking to the left on the right side, you got the road surface, and then the bank of the road, it slopes off at an angle about like my hand right here. And then it's flat, and then it was probably 25 feet over here or better from the bottom to where the pine tree started. And it was just grass. They had went through and cut that grass, the county or whoever. And y'all, when I come around the curve, I got called into work. It was really cold, and I worked for a propane company then. I drove a delivery truck hauling propane. And I was upset because back then, deer season went out the last day of January, and this was January the 29th, and I'm having to work. And I'm supposed to be in the woods. I'm not happy. And I'm doing everything I can to get off of work, at least a half a day where I can go to the woods. Well, when I rounded that curve and topped that hill, at the far end on the right side at the wood line, I see this guy step out of the woods. And it's just upright, solid black, and I'm getting a profile, a side profile of an upright person with two legs step out. Well, as soon as that thing steps out, you could have went one Mississippi, and this thing goes from sideways, it steps and lines up at me, and it compresses. It just like it drops down. And by that, it's like its knees bowed out and went down like its legs are like this. Its knees went out and it kind of went down. So its legs come out and back to its feet. And you can see it kind of like hunch over, and its arms went out to its side. So the whole thing just like whoop. It probably didn't go down to half its height, but close. And it does this like, in my mind, this thing is like, oh shit, I'm caught. And it like hesitates, and it's clicking in my mind, that ain't a person. And I see it step, and it's like this big, like a sway, and its one leg stretches back out toward the wood line it just stepped out of. And just about the time it puts its weight on that foot to dart in the woods, it stops. And it turns back toward me, but it spins all the way back around. So it does a whole 180. And it was almost like, oh, hell with it. I can make it. I ain't worried about him. And this is what I'm picking up in my mind, because this thing, it spins back 180 degrees instead of going back in the woods. It turns back. And I watched this thing go from standing dead still. It kicked off of one leg. And I swear to y'all, it was like the closest comparison that I can give anybody. It's like, I'm a 70s kid. I watched the Bionic Man. And when they would jump, and, it'd be like slow motion. I was waiting on that noise, because this thing kicks off of one leg, and the one leg comes up, and it kicks off the other one. And I watched this thing go from standing dead still over here. It goes up, and the first foot that hit the ground was on asphalt. We went back and measured it, and I've got all this wrote down, but it was 20-something feet horizontal. From here to the road surface was 20-something feet. Seemed like it was 23, 24 feet. The elevation from where it left up here is almost 5 feet. And I've told people, I said, people's like, well, it's somebody in a costume. Okay. A normal Toyota Camry is probably close to 5 feet tall. We'll just give or take, it's close. So the next time you're at Walmart, the next time you're anywhere, and you see just something the size of a Toyota Camry, back up to the door on the driver's side and take you about 7 long paces. So that's going to put you roughly 21 or so feet away from it. Turn around and look back at that car. And anybody that can stand dead still and kick off one leg and jump on top of that car, and when you hit the top of the car, be running at full speed, I want to see it. I watched this hairy creature just launch up in the road and it hit on 2 legs. It ran, and it didn't run straight across. It kind of ran at an angle toward me, because the way the road was curved, it was angling at me. And when it got across the road and it got to the ditch on the other side, it looked like its stride just got a little bit more exaggerated, and it went across another ditch. Where it cleared there had to be at least 14, 15 feet and about a 2.5 foot elevation on the other side. So it just barely strided and just zipped across that. And on the my left side of the road, that's where you got the road and a power line right away. So there's power line and road running parallel. They had bush hogged everything under the power line, and there's a power pole, and a guy wire that comes down. It's got the anchor, holding, stabilizing it, because the curve where the power line makes the curve too. Well, this booger crossed within probably 10 or 12 feet of that. There was a privet hedge, like where the guy wire went in the ground. They had bush hogged around it, but it left like a privet hedge had grown up, kind of looked like a sprout of broccoli, because it was little at the bottom and it bushed out at the top. But it ran between me and that privet hedge, and I can remember seeing that the thing locked about this much, 12 inches or so, being the same height as the tallest limbs or leaves on that privet hedge. It was really close to being that high. I watch it traverse across that cut grass, and then there was a blackberry briar thicket. And anybody that has blackberry briars, they'll grow up, and then their weight, they'll fall over. They'll go over this way, and then they'll go that way. And the thorns on a blackberry briar are not straight. They're like little hooks. So they hook on each other, and if you try to pull them apart, it's like they're, glued together. Mm-hmm. I watched that thing run through a blackberry briar thicket, probably, we'll say 40 feet of blackberry briars. And I can remember seeing this thing was so jet black that through the brown briars, because this is January, everything's dead and dried out looking. I could still see through the briars where they were laying and folded and twined up. I could see its legs, moving, going through that. But from this thing's waist up, there was nothing. There was no briars. It looked like its belly button would have been above the briars, any of the briars. Well, when me and my dad went back later, after that same evening, I went back, took a tape measure, and got the checking everything. The briars, the tops of the briars, like I said, I'm 6'1". Tops of the briars hit me about the top of my chest right here. So that's about where this thing's waistline would have been. The privet hedge that it locked about this much, being as tall as, was like 10'2" or 10'3". So I always tell everybody, conservatively, it was 8.5 feet at least, bare minimum. It was 8.5 feet tall. And going by that, from what I saw when it turned and faced me and squatted down, this thing had to be 4 feet from outside of its shoulder to outside of the shoulder. We're talking about 4 feet wide. And from the front of its chest to the center of its back, when it turned sideways to me, like profiled, we're talking over 2 feet thick. At least 2 feet minimum thick. I mean, y'all, this thing was massive. And people have asked, did this thing look like was it an anvil shape? I mean, was it like narrowed the waist like a bodybuilder? No. No, what I saw was massive as far as the muscles. And this thing was ink black. I'm talking about ink, the darkest black you could ever think of. And it was so shiny. And it looked like it was groomed. I'm talking about, it looked like, I'll tell people, you'll see a Brahma bull out in a field, and like sun hits it, and their hair, their coat is super shiny. And like when you see the muscles, like if its shoulder, that cow takes a step, or a horse like that, if it takes a step, you can see the muscles working. And like where the sun reflects, it'll be like gray or silver. You know what I'm saying? It'll be, you can tell it's black, but it'll change. It looks like the colors are moving. That's what I was seeing on this thing's biceps and its triceps, and even its chest. I could see like the color was changing, but it was because of the sunlight hitting it. I could see the thighs. I could see the muscles in the thighs bulge and contract and release. And it was like it was changing colors, but it was just simply, it was in the broad daylight, sun hitting on it. And y'all, this thing had, I tell everybody, this one had a badonka butt on it. It stayed huge, like it was more barrel shaped. It didn't taper in tight waist. This thing, now I don't mean it had like a big old beer belly, But no, it was bulky and stayed big all the way down to its butt. And honestly, its butt come down and didn't just angle. It's like it come down and tucked in and went down. But we're talking about arms that looked like they were the size of 5-gallon buckets at the bicep. In the legs, the thighs looked like they were, this big around. They looked like they were bigger than my torso. It's amazing, because I tell people, I say, well, if you tell them, I saw something that was 4 feet wide and 8.5 feet tall, the first thing they think is a basketball player. And I'm like, no. Take a 1,200-pound cow and stand it up and use that for the torso. That's what we're talking about. It's freaking massive. And but yeah, that's when sure enough my whole world changed.
And y'all, I've been there.
That'll definitely do it.
He took me, we turned around and he came back and he stopped. He said, okay, I saw it up here. And then we got out and I walked down there and he said, that's about where it was at. Looking at exactly how he's describing it, Greg does a great job of describing the situation to try to put you guys there. But we talked about this. The only thing that I can think of that can make that jump would be a deer running wide open and bounce. And, a deer, what, weigh 120 pounds? Something this big to launch on 1 foot. I'm standing there in the field and I'm looking at the road, and the road is like right at my chin. And I'm 6 foot tall. So, and we're talking, how many feet did you say it was from the launch to the middle of the road?
Roger, it was around 23 feet or something like that, about what we figured out, I think is what it was. It was 21, 23, 20 something feet, and that it had to be that far.
And think about the mass he just described to y'all. Now, today, I don't know why it took me this long to look this up. I'm going to read something to y'all. For some people say, well, it might have been a gorilla. Okay. So I asked, can gorillas jump a long way from a standstill? Short answer is no. No, gorillas aren't built for long-standing jumps. Here's why. Body design. Gorillas are heavy and power dense. Adult males can weigh 300 pounds to 450 pounds. That mass is great for strength, not for explosive jumping. Leg mechanics. Their legs are relatively short compared to their torso and their hips and knees. So no gorillas can't do that. And the thing is, I never even thought about a gorilla, but I do know what people, they're like, well, it could have been this, it could have been that. Standing in that spot, listening to his story and seeing the distance and the elevation and the length and all that, it blows my mind that something that big. But I do know this from training athletes years ago. The explosiveness comes from the badonkadonk and the legs. So it being that big makes sense, So I was just listening to the story, but when you get down there to the spot and then see what it does, and if somebody said it in chat, I was thinking the whole time, he said when it squatted down and it widened out, it could go left or right, and it decided to go over the road. So we had talked about this privately. I'm like, you know what? I wonder if it had left some hunters. This is speculation, and it made the decision not to go back to a danger and made that getaway across the road. But I was proud for him. I know when he was telling me, you can hear it in his voice. He's reliving it that day. And I was proud he finally got to see one, because now you know what you're dealing with, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like I said, the thing about it, see, I had been blessed enough to, and this is a wild story, because Tal Bronco, the man's name was Bill White. He was from Arkansas, and he was a researcher and had researched these things for over 60 years. He had many, many encounters, and he had researched these things all over the globe. I forgot how many. He did a bunch of work for the government, and he'd been in all kind of countries. He's kind of like Coonbo. That book right there, Bill White wrote that book, and there's some of my encounters and some of my daddy's encounters is in that book. Now you can't get the paperback anymore, but you can get that book online. And some of the pictures that's in this book are some of the pictures that I took right here. I'd signed a waiver and allowed Bill to use, of course, our stories or our encounters. I hate saying stories, our encounters. And the cover of this book, that is based on a encounter that happened in Double Springs, Alabama, which is about 15 miles from where I'm sitting. And it's a lady that they had Bigfoot around their house, and their house caught on fire, and Bigfoot, they all got out, and a Bigfoot walked out of the woods and crouched down on the edge of the woods and watched their house burn. But look, the county I live in, and
real quick, I wanted to just point out for the audio listeners, the book that they're describing is titled Southern Bigfoot Files in Alabama. So if you're listening, it's the Southern Bigfoot Files of Alabama. And yeah, definitely going to be adding that one to my collection for sure.
Yeah, but we, I mean, and like Roger started off, telling people I'm not a researcher. I don't go out and actively research very much. Now I do some, as far as when Cainbow calls and says, "Hey, let's go see if we can find something." But here I don't get out. I don't try to provoke these things. The first 14 or so years I dealt with these things, it was not good. It was not good at all. I'm talking about they didn't like me and I didn't like them. And people say don't point a gun at them. I wouldn't advise you to point a gun at them unless it's no other option. I've stopped them from bluff charging several times when they would come running at me, and when I leveled a rifle down, they would stop. They would absolutely stop. Now, they weren't happy. I'm talking about they would throw a temper tantrum, and that's something else that most people don't never talk about. These things would work themselves up in a frenzy. And I've had these things run so hard at me, it sounded like a car wreck with no motor noise. And I've had them come around my tree stand. We'll just kind of shorten this up, Roger, because we ain't got enough time for me to go in depth in it. I've had them come around my tree stand and circle the field and get downwind and huff and grunt and growl, and then walk back bipedally and walk within 20 yards of my stand and walk away. And I could hear them go 200 yards, and then they would get quiet because I thought they went off the hill to the river and left. Set up in there another 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then sneak down my stand. And as soon as I hit the ground and made the first crunch in a leaf, it sounded like the whole world exploded, and the things would come charging back, running right at me. And I've had them breaking limbs where I ran out in the field, and by the time I could run about 30 yards, this thing had done went between 150, 200 yards through a thicket, and it came right back to the tree that my ladder stand was on. And I'd spun around and jerked my rifle up, flipped the safety off, fixing to shoot whatever come in the field, and the thing wouldn't come out. It stayed in the field about 20 feet or 20 feet out of the field, and it was mad. Now, this thing was huffing. I could hear it breathing. It was just grunt. It just like, and then it'd break limbs. And look, it wouldn't just stand in one spot doing it. This thing would walk, pace back and forth about 15, 20 feet, and it was just shredding everything around. It was popping limbs, sounding like as big as my arm, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I've told Roger and everybody, these things remind me of, like, if you see video from a football, like a locker room, everybody's in there, and this guy's mad, and that guy gets mad, and they're pumping themselves up, and they're screaming, and they're yelling, and they're working up a frenzy and just getting madder and madder, psyching themselves up. That's what these things will do. They'll actually like building up bravery to, that neighbor go, he's just mad, and they get worse, and they get louder, and they get louder, and they get louder, and they're just tearing the whole world apart. And y'all, I've had them do that several times.
And y'all,
one time, I've heard you and Roger talking about that. That's crazy.
Yeah. And the thing is, I always tell people I appreciate everybody in this community, and Greg's one of them. He introduced me to Kumbo, and and multiple other people, where they're just a wealth of knowledge. Greg won't admit it, but his comes from experience also. But just like the time that they had a fellow with him, and they were bluff charging him, running him out, and Greg said you don't have any guidance early on, and he said he accidentally made peace. They had their guns drawn, and you just let out a big whoop, didn't you? Like as loud as you could.
Yeah, Roger, what had happened that night, my buddy Alan that passed away this year, bless his heart, boy, I miss him. But anyway, he'd hunted upper field, and I'd carried one of his friends from Birmingham down to the lower field, and I went on down on the river and was hunting. We came out, we got back to the truck. Alan wasn't there. He hadn't made it back. And I told his buddy, I said, dude, we're fixing to have to go in there and get Alan. And he said, he'll be out in a minute. I said, no, something's not right. We got to go after him. I said, he may be in a bad way. Oh, I'm sure he's probably deer in the field or something. I said, no, look, not here. I said, if there's deer in the field, he would have run him off, but he'd been back at the truck time it got dark. I said, we don't stay in the woods till complete dark here. And this guy didn't believe us. He thought we were trying to pull something over on him. And because when Alan asked me if it'd be all right if he came and hunted with us, I said, did you tell him what we're dealing with? He's like, yeah, but he don't believe it. I said, well, if he don't believe it, don't mean that it's not real. He said it. I told him, I said, look, I told him, I said, now look, if he's okay with something possibly happening and he's not going to be madder than hell at us, he's more than welcome to go. But it's on his own accord. And, I'm going to tell him how he's going to have to behave and this and that, because I've been trying to get along with these things. Well, I told his buddy, I said, look, grab your stuff. Let's go in here. We done made it back to the truck, and this guy laid his rifle up on the hood and had I called it his Scooby-Doo book bag. He had a little pouch. He had a bunch of hunting stuff in. I said, let's go get him. And we turned to go. It was a cattle gate, had a 16-foot cattle gate. My truck's parked on the outside. The bumper's about, 3 feet maybe from the gate. We'd parked outside. Well, I hear some rock, and the road going out through this cutover to the upper field was rocks about the size of my fist. It was, we call them cat head rock, big limestone rock. And I heard one, something crunched like it kicked it, clip. You could hear it. Well, I look, and y'all, it's done got dark, and I see this orangey red glow, and it's that big. And I'm like, what in the world is that? And I'm looking, and I've got my Browning rifle. It's kind of laying in the crook of my arm like this, and I'm just holding it, and I'm looking. And I see it move. Well, I'm still trying to figure out, I'm like, what in the world is that? I'm staring and looking at it. Well, it gets up a little more, and look, the moon is coming up. So he kind of, like part of it, where I'm looking, I'm seeing the glow. All I can see is the glow. And he goes probably just a few feet, and the moonlight hits him. It was some of the little bitty pines was shading him, and he kind of like stepped over, and I could see the outline of Alan. In his hand is what's glowing. He's got his Browning rifle. He's got a 7mm Magnum bolt action A-bolt. It's pointing straight up. He's holding it in his right hand. It's pointing straight up, and he's got his left hand's glowing. Well, he's got a AA mini mag light, and he's got the bezel in his hand, and he's got his fingers cracked open where there's a little sliver of light shining at his feet. And I'm like, what is he doing? Well, he comes up a little bit and he'd stop. And he'd come up a little bit and stop. And finally, I got my rifle and I'm like waving at him. Well, I can see him a little better. And he turns his light off, and he takes not turn it off. He clipped his hand where it closed it up, and he points at his ear, like listen. And then he points over here, like listen over here. He stays, his left hand, he's pointing his left ear, and then he's pointing to his right, like listen over here, listen over here. And I start just over exaggerating, just going like this, like, okay, I don't want to say nothing. His buddy's over here going, what is that? Is that him? What's he doing? I'm like, shh, be quiet. Shh. He said, what's going on? Shh, be quiet. And then Al comes up just a couple more steps and stops. And when he does, I'm looking at him. Well, to my left his right, there's a limb breaks. Well, he walks a little bit and I hear crunch, crunch. Well, finally, I'll take my hand, and I'm going like this, like, come on, just big, motion, like, come on, come on, come on. And I just pull my rifle down. And I'm standing like this, looking over it. I'm watching Al, and I'm looking where I'm hearing this sound. When he starts walking pretty quick, this thing starts walking pretty quick. That thing had followed him about 250 yards, paced him all the way out there to the truck. And y'all, on the inside of that gate, there was a little opening, just like maybe a 30-foot circle that I pushed out with a bulldozer to park vehicles, but I never did use it because the gate made too much racket and I had room outside. I just parked there and walk in. Well, I'll cross this little 30-foot gap. That thing walks up on the other side of this 30-foot gap, and there's no way it was over 5 feet in the bushes. It was walked right up to that, which all we got is a little bit of moonlight highlighting the tops of these stuff that's about 10 foot high. And Al gets there and he is like out of breath. He walks up. I'm on one side of the gate. He's on the other one. He's like, that SOB, that son of a gun followed me all the way from, he said, it come in there way before dark. Said it walked around and got to huffing and grunting. Said then it left. And I heard it go sound like 150 yards and left. He said, I waited. And said, when I come down, said, here it come running. And said, they didn't come up there acting like it done you. Said it come up there and it stayed back. And said it started circling the field. And he said it followed me all the way, just paced me all the way out here. He said, that's why I'm so late. He said, I don't know what to do. I said, well, brother, I was fixing to come in there after you. He said, and this thing is sitting there the whole time, me and him's whispering back and forth. This thing would go, and then he'd quit for a minute. And it was just like it was just standing there within 30 feet looking at us. Well, his buddy's going, who is that? Man, y'all got somebody down here trying to trick me? What? Man, this ain't funny. What's going on? Man, this some BS. What? I mean, who is that? Is that somebody? Man, that's one of y'all's friends? And we're like, dude, shut up. Man, this ain't funny. What's going on? And look, y'all, this guy had convinced himself that we were pulling a prank on him. And I'm like, look, dude, there ain't nobody trying to fool you. I told you what may happen before you decided to come. I told you. He's like, man, who's got the keys? Who's got the keys to the truck, man? Hey, unlock the truck. We got to go. I said, just calm down. Calm down. And I looked at Alan. And I mean, at this time, we're like from my face to my hand apart. I said, brother, get around over here. And he walks around the gate and steps in there. So it's me and him standing between the hood of my truck and the gate. And he's like, what are we going to do? Now, look, this thing, it'd break a limb and it'd sit there and you could hear it breathe. And then it would huff. It wasn't like it was belligerent. It wasn't wide open, but it was just like low. And his buddy's still not happy. He's like, man, we got to go. Let's get in the truck. And look, all this stuff had mustered up to this point. I mean, I've done seen them. I put up with them being belligerent. They had been trying to run me off this piece of property for a long time. And I was pissed. The inner redneck in me had done bowled up and the top of the damn tube had exploded. I was done. I was like, this is it. By God, we'll throw my hat down. We're gonna tangle right here. And I looked at Alan. I said, let me tell you something. I said, I got 5 rounds in this Browning. Now I got a Browning semi-automatic 30-06. And I'm nearly surgical with this thing. I said, I'm fixing to do something. If that thing comes out, I'm fixing to put 5 30-06s in it, either its head or its chest. I said, don't you fire a shot till you hear number 5 go out of this rifle. And I looked at his buddy. I said, I said, dude, I'm going to shoot 5 times. Alan's got 4 in his rifle. Do not fire a shot till his rifle goes dry. I said, where's your rifle? He said, I unloaded it. I said, get your damn pistol out right now. This dude had a 40 caliber Glock on his side. I said, get that pistol out. Now look, y'all, we're 30 feet from this thing and it's still over here huffing and growling, done right on top of us. And I'm done mad. I mean, look, enough's enough. I've done what I thought wasn't going to live a bunch of times at this point.
And we'll get to those in a part 2. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But now look, I mean, I'm ready. Gloves is off. One way or the other, this shit's coming to a head. And Al goes, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to try something. And I told him, I said, look, as soon as my rifle goes dry, I'm either going to draw this .357 combat revolver or I'm going to be loading rounds back my .06. But I'll be dang if we're going to all start shooting and be standing here with an empty weapon. Because I don't know what's going to happen then. And look, just for the record, I don't want to shoot one of these things. I think that's when it's going to go really bad. I think that's going to be when it goes horrible. But it's going to be a have-to situation. Y'all, I leaned my head back, and I told Alan, I said, I'm going to try something. And one of the main things I'd heard them do was that whoop, that WHOOP. And this thing is 30 feet from me, and it's still over here doing this mumbling. And they sound like an old man that went to get his senior coffee, and they told him that they couldn't sell him no senior coffee no more. And he's uttering under his breath, and that's what it's doing. It's over grumbling and huffing and carrying on like it's disgruntled. And I leaned my head back, and I done a whoop. WHOOP as long and loud as I could hold it. I felt like I pulled air from my guts to blow out this whoop. And the very second that I did that, it was like you jerked a big off switch or mashed a mute button. That thing went from making this noise. It got like, I'm talking about like silent. You could have heard a pin drop sound like a sledgehammer falling. That thing got totally quiet. And then it was like 3, 2, 1. This thing was like you had just told it that its mama's ugly and ain't nothing they can do about it. It was like it was disgusted. It just went, but it was more of a guttery, just like, like, well, the gig's up. They know shit ain't pulling one over on them. And y'all, it sounded like this thing turned 180 degrees and started walking. And y'all, that thing walked as straight away from us out through that cutover as it could. And it was breaking limbs and saplings, pulling briars and vines, making all this racket. And it's just walking. That thing sounded like it went out there about 100 yards and stopped. Hearing a little bit of crunch, 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 went on and left, was gone. I'm looking over at Al and his buddy. His buddy's over there, white as a damn sheet. And Al goes, that got interesting. I said, yeah, sure did. I said, get in the damn truck. Dude, we got the truck and we's coming out. And I mean, don't look, I'm sure you could have cut my throat and I wouldn't bled a drop either. But honest to God, y'all, it was like all this stuff that they had done to me they would not let themselves be seen. They did not, you was not going to be able, they'd run right up on me, but they wouldn't get where I could see them. I could not lay eyes on them. And it was like they were doing that just to intimidate and to scare. And look, the shit worked. It worked really well. But the intimidation factor of it. But it's like when I called its bluff and I went back with a sound that I'd heard it make, it was almost like, oh crap, he's figured us out. Now what do we do?
Yep.
And y'all,
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Roger.
No, and so, people that are in chat that don't know Greg and us and our attitudes toward these things, we don't want to hurt them at all, and we don't want to get hurt. But so that's where it comes from. Some of you having dealings with them for 20 years, and then us not knowing what these things are, and who do you talk to? So, talking to Greg, what y'all have to understand is Greg and his dad got a new place to hunt. There's boogers there, and they're hunting the same food.
Mm-hmm.
And we have kind of figured out, they were trying to run them off. And now, since Greg called his bluff, their bluff, tell them about the deer they steal from you and tear them in half and give you part of it.
Man, yeah. We've had them. I've had 6 deer stolen. I'm not talking about we'd shoot one and have a blood trail and, a lot of blood and find a puddle of blood and they'd just be gone. We've had a couple of them. But I'm talking about one time. Here's one, for instance. This is just one of them. I shot a deer. It was in that upper field. It was about 175 yards. I shot the deer, and it hit the ground, and it rolled over on its stomach, and it like lunged out of the field. It was right at the edge. And it's like it just slid into the bushes. Well, I sat there for a few minutes, climbed down, walked out there, and y'all, I got within 20 feet of where the deer was at, and there was blood everywhere. You could just see it, just blew blood out everywhere. I walk up there and I look, and I had this growed up mess is so thick you can't see. And the deer, actually, it looks like tunnels. They'll eat all the vegetation and plow them a hole through, and it looks like looking through a culvert pipe. Well, I get up there, and there's this where the sage grass was kind of high, where I'd bush hogged it down and left a little bit I couldn't quite get to. It looked like you took a mop full of blood and drug it. And I walk up there and I lean down and look. Well, it's about maybe 20, 25 feet. This deer's laying. He's dead as a wedge, just laying there. He just barely got out of the field. So I cross over that bloody grass and kind of duck walk, and then I get inside just about 4 or 5 feet. You can stand up because it opens up in there. I walk up behind this deer, take my boot, kick it. It just kind of jiggles. I thought it was an 8-point, and this was a pretty good deer. I mean, its rack was about this wide and about that tall. But this one didn't have any. The first points are called brow tines, like over your eyebrows. The brow tines just had little nubs, and so it made it a big 6-point. And this was a nice deer. I reach down and pick its horns up, and I'm turning its head around. Its tongue's hanging out. The deer ain't breathing. Here's this big hole blowed out of it that big right behind both front shoulders. This deer's dead. It's totally dead. It's not doing nothing. I lay its head back down, walk out, had to walk back out in the field and go about 200 yards out to my truck, unlock the gate, drive the truck in, back up there in the field, walk around to the back. Here's all the blood. There's the blood into the straw, which I didn't have my deer rifle. I always carry a .357 Magnum under my shoulder. I walk over there and I step over the sage grass, lean down to duck walk up in there. I look up, my deer's gone. Ain't there. It's just, there's no drag marks. There's a pool of blood about this big, but there ain't no deer. That thing's gone. In the course of less than 15 minutes, and there's no way another person could have got in there. It's a growed up thicket. There wasn't no coyotes drug it off, because this deer was probably 185, 190 pound deer. There's no other road in there except the way that I came in. But we've had 6 under very, very similar circumstances of we've shot them. They're laying there dead. We walk up to them. We've had a couple that we've actually drug, got a hold of them, drag them part of the way to the truck or get them to a road where all we had to do was get a truck to come get to them, lay it down, leave, and come back, and the deer's gone. You can see right where they were. Here's the blood. Here's where we just brought it up. But it's just a free meal for them, But that one that my dad shot, Dad shot it an hour and a half, probably or better, before dark. He watched this deer lay at the edge of the field, about 200 yards away from him. May have been closer to 2 hours. It got dark. I went to go pick him up. When I got there, he come out of the shooting house, got in my Jeep. I went across the field. I said, "Where was that deer laying?" He said, "Well, it was laying over here. There's an old road that goes out of the field on that side." He said, "It was laying right there in that road." They said the deer come out exactly like you said they was, where they would come out about the time you said. He said, "I just picked out one of those big old does and shot her." I said, "Well, what'd she do?" He said, "She spun around, turned a flip, and run about 15, 20 feet, just fell over." Said she's been laying there this whole time. Said she quit kicking and everything. We pull over and I said, "Daddy, where's your deer?" He said, "She's laying right." Well, she ought to be laying right there. My Jeep sitting in the field with big off-road KC lights on the winch bumper and up on the top, headlights on. I get out, got a spotlight in my hand. There's a pool of blood half as big as my body where that thing had been laying fresh blood. The deer was gone. We looked all out in the field. I walked down that little old log road. The only thing I found was in the tall sage grass right there. I found it was 3 or 4 big oval impressions, about 18 or 19 inches and about probably 10 inches wide. it wasn't a real defined footprint, but they were about every 4.5 feet apart. The sage grass was mashed down in this big suspicious oval pattern. Then we waited about 2 days later. I went back over there, pulled out in the same 28-acre field, and got around to where that happened. And I looked, I thought it was a coyote. I thought it was a coyote out in the field. I turned my Jeep sideways and stuck my rifle out the window and was looking at it. I thought, what is that? So I drove over there, and it was that deer carcass. That carcass had been stripped clean, and the hide looked like you'd caught this thing, like its head's here and its tail's here, like you grabbed it in the middle and pulled it. The hide was stretched up over its head. The back half of the hide was stretched all the way down, peeled around on the bottom parts of the legs. The big chunks of meat, like the shoulder meat and the hams and all, was gone. The rib meat was still there. The back straps was gone. All the guts and everything, the heart, the liver, the lungs, all the intestines, all that was gone, all the sweet meat. There was a bullet hole in a rib on its right side, a little bullet hole, and then on the left side there was a chunk of rib, like the bullet went in small over here, expanded and took out a whole piece. So it was shot on the right side, on the right side, and exited the left, which was what happened to the deer that Dad shot. But that field had been rained on. There was no tracks out in this field. Where this carcass was laying, you could see my Jeep tracks where we'd turned around 2 nights before. My Jeep had went within about 12 feet of where that carcass was laying. That carcass, the deer was not laying there. It didn't get stripped there. We got to looking, and you could see, now this is probably 40, 50 feet from the wood line. There was no tracks out in this field at all. No tracks, especially no big giant tracks. You could see where this carcass had hit that soft soil. It impacted, and it had tumbled, and it came to rest on its side. The neck went out and was spun like a corkscrew, like twisted up. Its neck was. Yes, and all the meat was gone off the neck. But it was 100%, it was the deer Dad killed. And what it made me feel like is like, you may have killed it, but we took it away from you. We got what we wanted, and y'all can have the scraps. And that's in that book that you posted up a while ago, the Southern Bigfoot Files.
And
that's one of the chapters.
This is important, y'all. There were no cut marks, right?
No, there was no cut. There was nothing on that thing looked like it had been touched with a blade at all. Everything looked like it had been just ripped. But it looked like something had just grabbed it in the middle, just like the middle of its back, and just pulled and just stretched the hide out like this. But
so did it almost like it turned the hide inside out as it came through? Or was it all...
Look, that's exactly what it was. That's the way the hide was. The hide was inside out, and it was pulled down like stretched.
And 99.999% of your hunters either start at the head or they start at the tail and go, which you don't start in the middle. You can't even do a rabbit like that. As a human, you can peel a rabbit, but you can't start in the middle and peel a rabbit.
Yeah.
So
But like I said, I took a bunch of pictures of that, and Tal Bronco's book, that Southern Bigfoot Files, that's in there, and that's one of the pictures he used. Was that picture?
So, y'all, we'll definitely have, y'all might see a part 5 and 6 out of Greg because we're all the time talking. But something happened a few months ago, and you tell what you can. We've mentioned it, but Greg got a call, and a local neighborhood got attacked by a booger, and law enforcement was called. Can you tell us a little bit of that story as much as you can?
Yeah, I mean, I can go into the part that went over the airways for all to hear. It was there was a area. It's probably 15 miles from where I'm sitting, but it's in this county. There was from what I gathered, it was about 3 or 4 residences within like a quarter of a mile something got to beating on their houses, and it got to throwing stuff up on the roof, and it got to screaming and yelling and having a fit. And to the point that one of the guys had went outside with a shotgun and actually shot at it, but said what he saw was covered in hair and what no bear, said it was running upright. And I'll tell you what they done. They actually called 911 2 days in a row, or 2 evenings in a row, right after dark. They had a problem 2 evenings in a row, the same residents. And then maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks later, they called them again, said the thing was back. And, but now look, this county there's documented reports for a very, very long time.
Yeah. And the reason I wanted you to mention that, yes, it's in northern Alabama. The reason I want you to mention that is, like, you know, we tell stories from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. This is still happening. I mean, it's not like, I mean, we go to Greg's, and a lot of our friends go, and stuff happens. It's just, you know, Flat Rock's he's in here tonight, I believe, and he got ran back into the man cave.
Oh yeah, that's what y'all look. I love Flat Rock like a blood brother, because y'all, I know what he's going through. But that's what I told some of them the other night. We was some of us doing a live chat. I said, you know, as much stuff as old brother Flat Rock's had, I said he come up here that's about a 4.5 hour drive for him to come up here, and he come up here and hung out with me one evening. And then he spent the night up here, but he went out here on my back porch where we're doing a live chat. But with me and him both in the same room, it was getting a feedback. So he goes outside on my back porch, and he's sitting. I got a big picnic table. This is my cabin at the rivers where I'm at right now. My house is about 7-8 miles from here. But anyway, he goes outside and he stays about 10 minutes. He comes back in. He comes back in here in the living room, and I just look at him. He's like, I'd come in and said, you got a damn booger out there in the yard. And I'm like, what? He said, there's a booger in your yard. I said, you see it? He said, nope, come up on the dark end. He said, the end of the porch right here. Said it walked up by the handrail up in the end wall. He said, that thing couldn't have been that far around the corner. Well, from where he was sitting on the picnic table, he would have been within 12 feet of this thing. It walked right up to the edge of the porch. Yeah. So look, when it spooked Brother Flat Rock, that ought to give some of the people that know Flat Rock a little bit of an inkling how brave they can get here.
Greg said, Flat Rock, you okay, brother?
Yeah. He told me, he said, man, that thing was loud. He said, they don't usually come up that close at my place. I said, well, I know for a fact I've been within 6 foot of one.
At
6 feet.
So, God, I got all these stories I want the new people to hear, but I want to get the ones that show, like, the motion and like the one that you spooked up while you were hunting. It was laying under the leaves.
Oh, man.
And listen, before we go on, we did our first episode on this channel. We had Greg and Kubo on. If you haven't seen that, it's over 8,000 views. Go check it out. It's a good time. Also, Greg is co-host of Woodwalkerz, you see on the bottom here with a Z. Mm-hmm. And then Misty and Greg do a Night Owls on it's Night Owls 1313 with a Z. Go check that out on YouTube. And when Greg gets to telling this story, there's so much information in it. And I kind of want to hit the high spots. And when he scared me with stories, but this one he's about to tell you, if you've ever been a hunter and you're sneaking through the woods or in a field and you flush up a covey of quail, you know how that makes your heart jump like into your throat and you almost have a heart attack. Think about spooking up a booger. Y'all listen to this.
Yeah, y'all. This was the second one I laid eyes on. I had walked up, went in hunting, and this was the same area that I'm talking about, exact same spot to the T, where I had one of my other most horrible encounters I've had with these things. But I had went through it's a bunch of big giant pine trees. And this is there's a wagon road. I'm talking about this. This is not a log road. There's a wagon road, a wagon trail through some government land. It's been there since probably earlier mid 1800s. And there's an old house place, and not very many people know where it's at. And there's remnants of an old dug well that's out on a ridge. And if you go out that ridge, it drops off to the river. Well, the deer would walk along this pine forest where the hardwoods met. It drops off into like a big valley or a hollow, we call it, just down and back up. It's big hardwood timber. I'm talking about big, massive hardwoods. And I would go through this pines, this part was big pines. I could walk through it, and you could walk really quiet because it was mostly pine straw. Well, I would go out there and go out in the hardwoods, and I just found me a good place on the side of this hill or side of the ridge to sit on the ground. I'd clean out a spot, just get down to the bare dirt, and just sit and watch this hardwoods, and I'd catch a lot of deer coming up through there eating acorns or just traveling. Well, I hadn't hunted in there in a while, but I thought, well, I'm going to go out there because there's a big acorn crop this year, and there's probably going to be some deer, traveling through there. I'll either catch them traveling or catch them, eating. So I'm sneaking out through there, and this is, in the evening. I can't remember, but probably, between 1:30, 2 o'clock, something like that. So it's daylight. I sneak through this pine timber, and then I get out to where I'm going out this ridge, which puts this hollow roll off to my left. And it goes down, say 80 or 100 yards at a pretty steep slope, and then it flattens out, and it's probably 20 or so feet of flat ground, and it goes back up the other side. Well, this ridge I'm on and the neighbor ridge is, about the same level, and it's probably 150 or so yards from this top to this top. So this valley's between us. Well, I'm over here and I'm looking, and I'd ease and take a real soft, easy step, and I was looking and critiquing everything because I've killed a lot of deer by sneaking up on them and shoot them before I ever got where I was going. So I'd take one easy step and I'd look. Y'all, I go out into this hardwoods, and I'd went only a few steps, but I can see down into this hollow to my left. And I take a step, and it crunched. I didn't have any choice. It was big oak leaves, and it crunched pretty hard, and I knew it was going to. But when that foot, and I look down, and I place my foot, heel, side of my foot, and then roll it over flat. It crunches. When this leaf under my boot crunches, right straight to my left at the bottom of this hollow in that flat, it looked like something detonated. There is sticks and limbs and leaves and dirt and debris. Just boom. It's like going up at an arc, going out away from it like a 360-degree circle, just like it explodes up. And there's leaves just fluttering down and all this stuff, and sticks are whipping through the air. Well, in the middle of this big black creature jumps straight up, and it just like extends and whirls and starts running. And it was running straight away from me, going up the opposing hill. It's going up. And that thing is zigzagging because, all this is big timber. So it's like I can see it, I can't see it. I can see it, I can't see it. So I'm seeing it, and then it would dart, as it's going up. I watched that thing go all the way up, say 80 or 100 yards away from me. I'm straight behind it looking at it, and it crowns over the top of that hill. And I watch it go a little ways, and then it like goes on over, and I can't see it anymore. So I don't know if it was laid down there, it covered itself up and was asleep. I don't know if it was going to ambush some deer. I don't know what it was doing. I don't know if it was a structure it had made. Maybe it was inside of it. It was like, in town, you'll see like where they rake leaves over, and there'll be a mountain of leaves like, 5 foot high. It looked like you took underneath that and looked like a airbag in a car went off and just blew it up. But it was like a 20-foot ball of leaves, like confetti floating down and sticks whipping through there. And that still weirded me out. I thought, God dang, what if I'd have been down there in the bottom and that thing I'd got right on top of it and it done that.
Yep.
But yeah, but y'all, that thing
you'd probably be looking like Wile E. Coyote flying through the air.
Oh yeah. But that thing was jet black, y'all. I'm talking about jet black.
And so you got to understand, where he's at, and these are places he's hunting just not far from his house and in his man cave. But he can sit right there where he's at, and it's not every night, and it may go a month or so without anything. But he had one night jump up on the roof, and run across the top of the roof and stop right above him. And he was telling me about it. I went over there, and he said, then it ran after a little bit, it ran that way. And while I went over there, he's got a pine tree just 1.5 feet off the house there. So what it did, it went over to that tree and slid down that tree, and you could see where the bark had been scuffed a little bit. But y'all, he called one time and something tried to open the door on him about 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah, that's when it got. I don't mind them. I mean, they'd come up and hit the walls. They'll throw stuff up on the roof. But when that one got on the roof and it was drizzling rain, and when I first heard it hit the roof, I thought a big massive tree limb fell out. Well, big massive tree limbs don't fall out on one corner of the house and then run up and over the peak of the house and run down the other slope and stop right over your chair, stand there about 60 seconds, and then turn and run the opposite direction and then jump off the roof. And this wasn't when we built this place, I built it. I mean, I had guys up here, it was 240 pounds or better. They'd walk up here on the roof, you couldn't hear them. But that thing come across, now I don't think it was one of the big ones. I think it was probably a younger, a juvenile or something. And it wasn't like regular footsteps or sound like somebody. It had a cadence to it, like da-dunk, 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 da-dunk. And it reminded me in my head when I'm trying to, name that tune type of deal. When you see a gorilla and they run and it's kind of like they don't go straight. They kind of go like sideways. It's like they'll use like both hands and then their feet, both hands and their feet. That was kind of the cadence that I heard coming across the roof. But what weirded me out was I've got a recliner just on the other side of this computer. I was sitting in a recliner. By the time the thing went over the peak, I done raced over and caught a 357 Magnum, and I've laid the recliner back, and I thumb cocked it aiming at the roof because I don't know what's fixing to happen. That thing stops direct. If I took a plumb bob and hung it, the thing, if it's holding a plumb bob, it would have came right down in my chair. But about 60 seconds later, it turns and goes this way, and it goes off where there's another bedroom, and that's the bedroom where they usually hit the wall at. And but yeah, I've had them push the wall, I've had them slap the wall. Luckily for me, I've had people here. I've had other people here. Alan, my buddy, he got up off the double recliner that was here one night. I was sitting in a recliner, he's in a double recliner. He said, "You want something to drink? I'm going to the kitchen." I said, "Yeah, bring me back, like a Coke or whatever." He didn't make it 3 foot right here, and there was one hit the wall, sound like a kid on a dirt bike hit the side of the cabin. It shook the floor. It hit so hard. Nothing. No, we go out, look for tree limbs. There's nothing out there. We found muddy spots over 8 foot high on the sidewall. Now tell me how that mud got up there. It'd be a spot that big. It'd be like something put and just shoved the wall or slapped the wall. We found it on the porch post.
The night the door tried to open. I happened to be down there the next morning. I believe I don't know if it was just happenstance but he's telling me the story, and I just go looking around, and I found greasy hair prints from a forearm. It looked like it had to be standing on the left side of the porch as you walk out, and the rail hits me about right here, I think. So the thing's armpit had to be, at least that high. And I did a bad job taking pictures, y'all, but I did find the hair. So, Doug has the hair, and he'll let me know when he gets to it. But he's telling me this story. I didn't doubt him. I'm just like, well, wait a minute. If it did that, maybe there's something there. And there it is. the greasy hair prints hanging from the arm. And what happened, it was summertime, and that dust would been stirring, and it just like it landed on that greasy stuff. But anyway, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just what he told me. I walked right there, and there I find evidence, so it's, and I tell you what, I'm not gonna lie to everybody. I'll sit out on the back porch at night. We've been out there, but Misty turned the light off one night, and I come up out of the chair. I'm going in the house. I am not sitting out here. We've had P. Willie come in. Greg, he said, "Uncle Greg, I'm late. Sorry." He's apologizing to me. That's my son Peyton, y'all.
Yes.
We sat out there one night just talking, and there was fog. It was raining a little bit and fog, and we were sitting there talking, cutting up. And I look at Peyton. I said, "What are you doing?" He's leaned forward, and he said he kept seeing this yellow flash of light. Well, me and Greg look at each other like, what's he talking about? So in 3 hours, Peyton saw it 5 times, and then Greg saw it, and then I saw it. And it looked like an arc of energy, but it wasn't in the same place every time. At one point, it had to be at least 150 foot above the river there. So there's some interesting stories, and he's got one. When early on, I'm thinking flesh and blood. I still lean towards that, but we talk about him doing some strange things or being able to. Greg has a story he can tell y'all about in hunting, and there's a roadway maybe that cut like a logging trail, and one's come running off the hill. Tell him about that. That's one of the stranger things.
Y'all, look, it was hard enough for me to convince myself that these things could even possibly remotely be in my area. I mean, I would have bet everything that I had that there was no such thing in Alabama. Then, I came to terms that, yeah, they're real. They're here. I don't really know what to do about it, but they're here. They're stealing my deer. They're making these sounds. They're leaving tracks. I've seen them move. I can't explain how they move, because when I've seen them move, it defies physics. I mean, and that's another part of we'll jump into what people, and I don't like the term, the woo factor, because everybody is a way to, oh, well, I don't understand it, so let's make fun of people, or let's make fun of this. But
I'm right there with you. I don't like that term, but
all right. Well, here's my deal. Anybody, pretty much everybody, I'll just say it like this. The people that I know that's had a lot of encounters, a lot of them started off kind of the same way I did, kind of went down the same path, and they finally started having encounters, and then they start noticing that, well, wait a minute, this don't add up. How did that happen? How could anything do what I just saw happen? And it defies physics. The speed these things can move. It is, it's amazing. I mean, the one that I saw across the road that day, the first one, there's no way a deer could have even thought about outrunning what I saw happen. There's no way something that big. That would be like if you went by Farmer Brown's field and you saw his old Betsy the milk cow running 80 miles an hour. That's gonna look odd. That's what I saw. I mean, that's about how weird it was. It'd be like Betsy the milk cow outrunning a cheetah. I mean, you're gonna say, well, wait a minute, that's something strange. I was sitting in that upper field, the tree stand that one of the times when I was bluff charged, I was there. And these things had got to where they would come in a lot. Excuse me, they'd come in a lot of times around the field, and they would circle the complete field. They'd stay. Sometimes they wouldn't be over 5 or 10 feet out of the field, and they would circle the field just to let me know they was there, I think. And I heard one coming, and it was walking down the edge of the field. It was just out of the grass into the thicket. And I'm sitting in the stand facing this way, and this thing's coming from my ahead to my left. And straight to my left, the corner of this field, the corner's like in line with me over here. This wood line is coming down, going to intersect over here. So I'm looking. I can hear this thing 150 yards or further snapping limbs. I can hear vines pulling. Like when you're pushing through vines, you hear them ripping and leaves flying off and tree limbs are breaking. And not only am I hearing that, like I said, all this growed up saplings and stuff is 12 or so feet high or 13 or whatever it was at this point. But my feet are 15 feet off the ground. And it's just flat. So I'm up here and I'm looking across the tops of these trees. I can see a couple of 100 yards over top of it. I was watching saplings where I'm focused on. I'm hearing this sound. The sound is right here. I'm watching saplings bend over, and I would watch saplings that were close together push apart. You could see them push apart, and then they would spring back together. And then, what I'm seeing, this thing is like it's pushing through this thicket coming. It's coming, paralleling the edge of the field. It's walking right down by it. Well, on this side, in this corner, hard to my left, we had bush hogged down a bunch of those saplings, and this was probably 8-10 feet wide, maybe. It was just a small trail, and what it done, it went out in that thicket, and on the left side of it, the thicket continued, but it started opening up a little bit more, but it was still, you couldn't see in it. But this is super thick, and this thing is walking. Now, this is broad daylight. This thing's walking down through there, and it's coming on an intersect course to where if it keeps coming this way, this road or that path is running with it. You know what I'm saying? It's running here. So it's on the intersect, and it's kind of the corner of the field and that road. It walks right up to that. Y'all, I've done got my rifle. I'm laying down like this, and I'm looking right by the scope where if something steps out, all I got to do is just barely move my head, and I'm going to be, I've got it turned down to like 4 power, but this thing's only going to be about 60 or so feet. It's not going to be far, 60, 70 feet, maybe. So when it pops out, all I got to do is just barely move my head, and I can absolutely, I'm going to be looking at it magnified. All right. This thing walks up there, and I thought it hesitated. I thought it stopped because it's walked right up to, it's fixing to cross this road, this opening. I've just seen the saplings. I'm hearing the sound coming. It goes right to that. That thing gets totally quiet. And I'm sitting there and I'm not blinking. My eyes are like wide open and I'm focused. I'm like, all right, I'm going to see it. I'm going to see a good look because it's going to be close. It gets quiet for a few seconds. On the opposite side of that road, it was on the right side, the left side of that road, the same noises, the footprints or the footsteps or footfalls, whatever you want to call it. They continue on. Saplings are popping. Leaves are falling, crunching. Whatever crossed that road, I didn't see anything. There was no shimmer. There was no waviness. There was no shadow. It was like there was nothing across that road, but something 100% sure crossed that road. I can't explain that to anybody because I was watching, not only was I hearing it, I was watching the saplings and the little pine trees push sideways and come back up. We're talking about something pushing pine trees that was probably this big around. I'm a big guy. I can't push them trees apart like that. But it pushed all this stuff, and it was ripping vines and tearing and stomping and breaking stuff. And it wasn't like it was running. It was just like it was just walking up through there, and it crossed that opening. And I never saw anything. Now, you talking about spook and weird you out? Oh, yeah. Yeah, because how do you protect yourself against something that you can't see?
Exactly. And,
So,
and people, they ask so many questions, but anytime now the people that have dealt with these things a lot longer than we have or whatever, or they're lucky enough to be around people that can advise them, this stuff is mind bending. because they move like unlike anything else that size. When they make noise, when they make vocalize, it's not a normal cowbelling or anything like that. It's so powerful, even if it's just a huff growl. It's off the charts. Everything about them is off the charts. But the scary part, you know how big they are and how powerful they are. Then they can quit making noise and be in another spot. You know, he walked right across there. You didn't see him. So that's another, maybe Greg, we've told Greg, maybe they're wanting him to see this stuff because they keep
I'm wondering the same thing.
They keep coming to him. He doesn't really go to them. He'll get out and go riding and, with Kumbo and the guys and do whatever. But Greg usually leaves them alone, and he has called them out. He's called them by accident, by surprise.
Yeah.
But we all the time, it's like, there's so many instances. We could do this all night, but I don't have a dog in here. Y'all got a dog snoring?
No.
Hillary's hearing dogs snoring, y'all. I don't know what she's been out today.
That might have been my belly growling. I ate some soup. All
right, so we're getting requests for the famous story, the motorcycle story. Are you okay with telling that?
Roger, let's do that one on round 2. I ain't got that one in me tonight.
Right, y'all. There's y'all can go to Woodwalkerz and or Google Greg Howse's name and find him. He's told that story a lot of times. The reason I asked him out of respect, because it's one of those stories where he didn't think he was gonna make it, so I don't want him to walk through that.
Here's the thing, y'all. If I tell that story and do it really as much justice as I can, it messes me up for a few days. It just that I've been shot at numerous times. I've been in law enforcement 17 years now. 17 years. I've been shot at. We've tell people rolled around the mud, blood, and the beer. I've had some sketchy stuff happen. I've seen a lot of horrible things. But that day in the woods, when that one was upset with that motorcycle, that was the day I come to terms. I'm probably not going to make it. If things had happened, it was just teetering. If that thing had turned and come, if it had came 20 feet my direction, it was going to pop out in the wide open hardwoods, and I was going to be the first thing that thing saw that wasn't supposed to be there. And like I told people, like I said a while ago about these things working themselves up in a frenzy, that was probably the most violent anything I've ever heard in my entire life. I can't put it in words what I was hearing and what I was witnessing. And that thing would do I call it a bellow roar scream howl. And it would start off, and it was like a big Brahma bull that was hungry in the wintertime and you're putting out hay. And it started out low, and then it would ramp up into a lion roar, and then it would go into like a scream, like a man screaming, then into a woman screaming, and then it would go plumb up into like a coyote howl. And at the end, it was so crisp when it stopped, it was like a whip cracking. And I don't mean it was just short. I'm talking about it's like it's not going to quit. And how in the world is this thing? How has it still got air to keep? Because it's one breath, and it just started out real low, and it kept going up and going up and going up and going up, just ascending the tone, and it's pow at the end. And I've tried to explain to people the volume, and this thing was less than 100 feet, not yards, 100 feet of me, and y'all, it was so loud that I thought my eardrums were going to rupture, and they would be part of it in that where it was, the sound was changing, kind of the mid-range part where it got into the man scream, from the lion roar to the man scream. I don't know if it was hitting a certain sound wave or what, but when it would hit that part, my vision would blur. My eyes would it was like rolling a scope or a set of binoculars out of focus. And they would stay out of focus for a second or two, and then they would clear back up. But it's like on that ascending tone, it would hit a certain spot, and it just my vision would blur. And the only thing, like talking with Kumbo, is maybe part of the wavelength of that was vibrating my eyeballs so hard that they were losing focus. And we're talking about, guys, the best I could tell you as far as the volume would be like if you were in front of a locomotive train and it's sitting still on the tracks, and you walked up and stuck your finger to the front bumper on it and they pulled the train horn. That's what it was like. It was horrible. How anything made out of meat, blood, and bone could make anything that loud is beyond me. I don't know. And this thing, it didn't just do it once. This thing threw a fit. And it was all about a motorcycle probably a mile away revving up, and it pissed it off. And I listened to this thing work itself up into a full-blown temper tantrum. And it was less than 100 feet from me. And that thing sounded like if I'd been on my bulldozer pushing up a brush pile, it breaking saplings and breaking trees. And I watched it whip a full-grown dogwood tree. That tree's about that big around at the base. I watched that tree whip back and forth and go round and around like it was going to uproot it. And y'all, I was in a panic, full-blown panic, because most of the encounters I'd had with these things, when you'd have an encounter and kind of when the encounter was pretty much over, if they left, they would leave and they would go toward the river. They would always leave and go drop off the mountain and go toward the river. Well, the bad thing for me was it was here. I'm here, and the river was behind me. And that was my biggest fear is, oh no, when this thing's done with its temper tantrum, if it's going to leave and go toward the river, it's going to pop out within probably 75, 80 feet of me. And I'm going to look like a sore thumb out here in these hardwoods, because I'm standing on the ground, basically hiding behind a big pine tree and peeping around. I done pulled my orange off and hid it down in my clothing. And I'm trying to be as inconspicuous as I can be. And I was terrified. I'm talking about full blown. That is probably the scariest moment I've ever had in my life.
And y'all, this is before the whoop making peace, right? This is why you've had enough. When he said I've had enough, there's multiple things that happened before that. So it came to a head, and when he whooped at him. So
well, when I got back to the truck, and I'll go into detail, we'll tell it again, but it was so traumatic. When I did make it out of the woods and I got back to my truck, Alan was coming. He was there with me. Alan heard it. So I wasn't there by myself. I had somebody there that heard it. Alan was about 200 yards. The booger would have been in front of me and the river straight behind me. Alan is kind of cornered through this thicket to my left. He was about 200 yards away. And Alan would tell people that at 200 yards away, it was hurting his ears at 200 yards. I was less than 100 feet. Y'all, when I got back to my truck, I had a full-blown, all I can chalk it up to is a full-blown adrenaline dump, to the point I got sick and threw up.
Yeah.
I'm talking about it made me sick. Yes, I have heard them talk. That's the bottom green field. That's a long story, so we'll shorten that up to, yes, I've heard them talk, and it was a lot like the samurai chatter, but it was also like it sounded like mad Chinese people or part Native American, and them talking, y'all. If I'd had any way to record that, and I don't mean it was like 10 seconds or 20 seconds. I listened to this for 5 minutes, and I didn't know what was going to happen, to the point that I'm talking about snuck out of the woods, out of that green field, and I hightailed it to the dang truck, and I left. But I heard them, and it was, in my mind, I was picturing these things were like upset with each other, arguing, and they had to have their faces like right in front of each other, like a man and his wife that was mad over something. And it was real quick, and they would get stuck on a syllable, and they would repeat one syllable, and it would be like real choppy, but it would go like oi, 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 hey, oi, oi, hi, hi, oh, yeah. And then the other one, it'd be a total different voice. It'd be like, yeah, whoa, oh, yeah, ho, 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 yeah, oh, yeah. And it was just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back. And they'd get quiet for a few minutes. And then it was back and forth and back and forth. And I'm going, what in the hell am I going to do? Because there's two of them. I heard the first one come up. And then here, 5 minutes later, the other one comes through the woods and goes to that one. And I heard them pull a log. The first one ripped a log, an old rotten log off the ground, and flips this log. I hear the log roll down the hill and hit a tree. And it come to find out, this log, y'all, was probably, I don't know, it was probably 30 inches and about probably a 20-foot section, rotten log. But you could hear the log rip loose from the ground, and it tossed it. You could hear it hit and roll. And it sounded like you took a rake, like you were raking leaves, but it sounded like you was raking real soft dirt, and it was like it was splashing or splattering out on top of the leaves, like it was digging. And the only thing I could put together was it was finding grub worms and bugs and stuff like that, probably finding something to eat. Well, I've done listened to this for several minutes. I mean, it's been several minutes. And then I hear from where this one came from, I hear another one coming. And it's bipedal walking. Well, it doesn't do everything that this other one done. We can go into that detail because it'd take an hour and a half. But it comes through the woods and goes exactly to where that other one was. So there's two of them. And that's when they started conversing back and forth. And y'all, I listened to that for at least 5 minutes or longer. And I mean, I've got sweat beads rolling down my face and I'm shaking and like I've got to go. Because here's the icing on the cake. This was bow season. I had a crossbow. I had a Barnett crossbow with a expandable broadhead, but I had my trusty 357 Magnum right here. And I done got to the point, I had my crossbow by the forearm in this hand. I've done pulled my revolver and I've got it thumb cocked. And I'm sneaking like, I mean, I'm like Elmer Fudd sneaking up through here trying to get out of the woods to get away from these things. And y'all, when I was 100 yards from them, I'd finally got part of the trail where I had some timber between me and where they were. And I stood there and I'm sucking wind and trying to catch my breath and let the hammer back down on the revolver and put it back. And I took off to the truck. I fired that baby up and left. So, yeah, I've lived through a lot of stuff, y'all, that I tell people I don't have to base my stuff on what other people told me. I lived through this stuff because I'm here where they are. And as far as being a researcher, I don't research here. I get the encounters they choose to let me have. And people's like, well, if I was there, I'd do this. I'd put up cameras and I'd do this. Yeah, and you wouldn't see nothing. You put up some cameras, you're not going to get jack.
I can tell y'all why Greg's telling you these stories now is because he's trying to help some of y'all.
Yeah.
And relay some of the things that have happened. And, I'm one of the main ones he's helped he's learned from some people, and hopefully, when we have guests on, y'all learn something. So if you ever get in a situation, maybe you handle it, have a better chance of handling it the right way. Is that fair to say, Greg?
Yes, sir. Well, I went for a long time and wouldn't talk to anybody. And it was by sheer accident I got hooked up with Bill White, Tal Bronco. He came through this little town I live in and stopped at a restaurant. And one of the waitresses there, her husband, I hunted with him, and actually she hunted. And they were some of the very few people that knew about what I was dealing with. And Bill White had a Bigfoot hat on. She was waiting on his table and asked him, said, you know anything about them things? He said, yeah, I ought to. Said, I'm here doing I'm doing research not far from here. Said, well, you need to talk to mine and my husband's friends. So what do you mean? And she told him about me and some of the stuff I'd had happen at that point. He said, yeah, I do need to talk to him. Said, I'd love to. She said, well, I'll give you his number. When that old man called me, and from the time he met her till he called me he was sitting on my porch within an hour and a half. And we talked for 4.5 hours. And he became a very good friend that I will never be able to repay what he did for me as far as educating me. And he's the one that got me in touch with Tim Coonbo Baker. And see, Coonbo's farm is only about 52 miles from where Coonbo lives now. It's 52 miles from where I'm sitting. There's me and Coonbo, and that's our other brother from another mother, Troy Allen, lives in South Georgia. But y'all, I mean, I wouldn't talk to people, and it was tough for me to talk to Coonbo. And when I met Coonbo, I didn't have a clue who Coonbo was. I didn't know nothing about Coonbo. He was my total stranger. And you know, and I owe a debt of gratitude to him and Troy, Cheryl Corntassel, Jimmy Osmer. These guys, they took me in. I reckon I looked like a lost puppy or something. I don't know. They took me in, brought me into the group, and they taught me a lot of stuff and introduced me to a lot of people. But I went for years, wouldn't even think about doing a podcast. I had people want me to. And there was a guy in Oklahoma taught me into doing a couple. And then I went for probably 10 years. Didn't talk to anybody. Then Coonbo, he got me to go to LBL. I met Mark Noble and Larry Porch. Talked with them some, and then they talked me into going on Sawdust Beast and Beast TV. And I've done about, 8 or 9 shows with them in probably 12 weeks. So people can go back and research my name under Sawdust Beast or Beast TV. And the first podcast I done with them was episode 138. And some of them's labeled like Sweet Home Alabama. Some of them is Living with Bigfoot, Man Cave Bigfoot, because we call my cabin my man cave. Y'all can go back on there and listen to a lot of stuff I've done. And y'all, if it hadn't been for all that, I wouldn't have never met Roger. I wouldn't have met, it's like my adopted baby brother, Spencer, and my adopted sister, Misty. And Roger's like another brother. And, all these folks that I've met that I've got to know, and we look at them as like a big extended family. I mean, the moderator right here, Gary Spikes, Gary's one of the best people I've ever met. My kids look at him like he's extra uncle. Patrick Noble. I mean, the list goes on. Flat Rock. Y'all, this right here is a picture. We have a meet and greet. Try to do it at least once a year. This right here is one of our last meet and greets. I mean, this is part of the people that come out and camp with us. And I mean, it's we have a blast. I mean, we have a ball.
And it's once you find people that you can talk to that have something in common with, it's a bond. It's crazy. There's people in chat right now. We call each other cuz and stuff like that. We mean it. It's not like I said earlier in the show, I'm going to go to bed after this show. I'm going to get up early and I'm going to be right there, probably sitting where Greg's sitting tomorrow. And I don't know what we're going to do. And we ain't going to go hooping and hollering and beating on trees, but we're just going to talk. And Greg and I have talked to each other so much. It's like if I'm telling something that happened to me or he's telling something that happened to him, it's kind of like therapy, kind of sort of just to get it out. And but you learn a lot too. I mean, there's been things that's happened to Peyton and I. If we hadn't known the people in this group, we might have got in trouble. But because of the advice that they've given, we were a little bit prepared. It doesn't make it any less scary. Don't get me wrong. But you try to do the right thing, and so far it's worked. But oh man, hold on, Amanda. Do you have any questions for Greg? I know you ain't got to talk much, and
I've just been sitting here listening to it all because I hear y'all talking all the time about, hey, you remember this, remember that, just little bits and pieces. So getting to really hear a lot of the details of how you came into doing what you're doing and experiencing what you're experiencing, it's actually really cool. And so I know there are people in the chat and y'all have been saying it's just the tip of the iceberg. So you're definitely living the interesting life. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I went for a long time and didn't want people to even know anything about what I'd been through. And I got thinking that how Tal Bronco helped me, and like Coonbo and all these other guys. And I thought, well, it's time for me not to be scared anymore. And I really don't care what people think anymore. And, I dedicated a big portion of my life to helping people, being in the fire department. I'm an officer in the fire department. I'm an elected law enforcement officer. I've been in rescue squad. I've been National Forest Rescue Team. I've hiked as far as 23 miles to get people out of the woods, people lost, people injured. I've dedicated a lot of my life to helping folks. And I realized that I had a special niche, that there was a certain group of people that I could let confide in me, about things that they had happened to them. And I know what they're going through. And I realized that me keeping quiet about what I had happen wasn't helping anybody. It really wasn't even helping me. So I decided to open up about it. And I've had a lot of people call me and talk to me and tell me about what they had happened that still won't talk to anybody. And, I try to give people my honest opinion of what I would do if I was in their situation and how to conduct themselves with these things. But look, all of them, people want to stomp these things out with a cookie cutter. I've got people that I love dearly that's like, oh, they're the friendly forest people and they're out here to help us. Well, that your bunch may be. But you go 200 miles, that son of a gun may be, they may pull your arms off and eat your legs. I don't have any trust for any of them. So.
And yeah, we do know stories from credible people of things like that's happened too. So it's like, and here, this is a good one for you, Greg. What do you think this is, nobody really knows, but what is your opinion? What do you think they really are?
Look, my opinion on these things has changed a bunch of times. Like I said, I thought that, it was just some type of cross between people and gorillas, and, it was a missing link. I'm a Christian. I'm not much on evolution, but I thought maybe it was kind of a hybrid amongst, not really a missing link of people developing, but just something in between. And I thought maybe it's just something that's, stayed hidden, but it's a primate. And then I had to go into the realm of, okay, well, it's more than that these things can do things that I can't explain. They can move like I can't explain. I can't explain the one that I couldn't see. I couldn't, it's had to evolve. And then when it goes back, it goes, like I said, me being a Christian, it goes back into could it possibly be a descendant of the Nephilim? I'm open to that. I can't tell you that's what it is, but I do know that the Lord is in charge of everything on this earth. And I will tell you this. I had these things come around me, and I ain't gonna say bluff charge, but I had 3 of them had me hemmed up and treed in a box blind shooting house. I was deer hunting, and I thought I'm fixing to have to shoot my way out of the woods. And I finally got up enough courage, because it was fixing to be completely dark, that I got out of the stand, and I had my rifle up with a safety flipped and fingers straight, because I thought I was fixing to have to shoot some at the bottom of the ladder. And when I got out in the field, I couldn't turn my back to the woods. These things, there was 3 of them. There was one like here, and one here. It was like a half circle. And they were not happy. It was breaking limbs, sound like they were that big around and throwing stuff and huffing and growling and grunting. They weren't happy. They weren't happy I was there at all. And they damn sure wasn't going to hug my neck unless it was going to pinch my head off. And y'all, I tell people to this day, I don't know why I done it. I don't know why it come over me. And this is going to ruffle some feathers with people. But all I know to do is tell y'all exactly what I did, and I can tell you what happened. I didn't scream and I didn't yell, but I sure wasn't quiet about it. In a loud, stern voice, I commanded them things to leave in the name of the Lord. In the name of Jesus, I rebuked them things and told them they weren't welcome. I told them, I said, you're not welcome here. I command you to leave in the name of Jesus Christ. You leave here now. You're not welcome on this land. I'm in control of this land. In the name of Jesus, I command you to leave. And when I did that, it was just like you hit the off switch. There wasn't another peak come out of them. They wasn't even like another leaf cracked. And the whole atmosphere, it was like somebody picked 500 pounds off my chest. And it was like they were gone. To the point, I'm standing there with a rifle looking over it like, okay, what am I fixing to shoot first? And I'm sitting there rebuking them to the point I brought my rifle down, put the safety on, and cradled it in my arm. And I could turn my back to the woods and walk across the 600 yards to get back to my truck. I didn't care. They were gone. I knew they were gone. So I can't explain that. I cannot explain that. But that's what I've tried to tell people. If you're dealing with these things, if you're a Christian, know that the word of God, you can speak those words, and those words have power if you've got faith. I mean, we hadn't even touched on me being a miracle dude that's had miracles happen. I mean,
y'all, we can get into some things like Greg's been with a group of people before this was even talked about, and they're trying to figure out, like we talk about, why us? Why is it me? And then he's around some people, and every one of them had been struck by lightning before.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we were in a group. There was about, I think it was 7 or 8 of us, and 6 of us had been hit by lightning and lived to talk about it. I've been hit twice. I
don't get too close to him when it's cloudy.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you this, Roger. It hurt equally both times.
Yeah. It's tried to get me a few times, but I've been knock on wood, y'all. Now that's what this does. Once you get into this because you see a movie and you're like, oh man, this is cool. When you get past the point where you know they're real, you know some of their habits, they've thrown stuff at you or huff growled at you like me and Peyton and tried to run us out. You're so far past that. We say it all the time. Greg's so far past that. Now you're trying to figure out, well, what do I do now? Or what do I not do? That's the main thing. So, he has stories, y'all, because he's hung around some really great people. He's mentioned a lot of their names, but yeah, I was on fire one time. That was rough. Wasn't lightning though. If y'all want to hear some funny, listen, I'm going to tell y'all right now, if y'all want to hear some funny stories, go to Woodwalkerz with a Z and look for the night ones. Now look, don't have your kids in the room because it's, and we tell stuff that's happened to us. Everybody in chat. And then they started a channel just for that. So they wouldn't get Woodwalkerz kicked off the internets. And it's Night Owls with a Z 1313. Y'all go check some of that out. It's it'll be some of us probably telling stories, and that it doesn't have anything to be with Bigfoot, but that's the thing. You need that. You deal with these things enough. Verax deals, you need a laughter every now and then. You need to forget about it. It can consume you. If Greg's sitting there by himself, the odds right now that there could be one within 100 yards of him is pretty damn good. Because the people that asked came in late, he backs up to a big national forest and there's nothing back there. So, and he tells a story that I found useful, and it gives you, starts ideas and thinking, well, Greg started this by telling the story about he was coming through the creek or river one day, and there's a island there, sandy, and he was following tracks, and when it went up the hill, this flexible foot was dug in like this. So we're thinking that it not only flexes that way and this way, and some of the tracks we've seen on the sides of a hill in mud, they cup, and they always cup to the uphill side for traction. So because of his statement 2 years ago or better, I'm like, wait a minute. And you start paying attention. Well, what if they flex in every direction and it helps them when they're younger, climb trees and do stuff like that? We don't know. Hillary, we'll tell the fish fry next time. Great.
Yeah, we got to save something for part 2 now.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2, and I'll have to go back and see what we talked about. But y'all.
Well, see if you can bring nephew Peyton down tomorrow. We'll get him on something.
All right, we'll be down there about 8:30 or 9. Don't throw anything at us.
Well, just call me before you pull up on the door.
I will. But y'all, my son, he's had so much stuff happen to him since 2020, but his 2 possible sightings happened right there where Greg's at right now.
Yeah.
Now he won't come out and say exactly what it was, but he'll try. He's ruling out stuff, and it was similar to what Kumbo saw that night looking at your front door. So, yeah.
Roger, you think about this. You think about all of our very close, tight knit group of friends / family that's been here. That's what I was looking. I've got a big cutout Bigfoot up here on my wall. It's made out of aluminum. That's got autographs on it of the folks, the Bigfoot researchers that's been here and stayed, spent the night, come here and hung out with me. And there's probably close to 30 names on that.
Yeah.
And most of them's had an encounter here.
Yeah. And you and found evidence. Well, Peyton says he's coming just for the Minter cheese sandwiches.
That's what I'm telling. Look, Peyton, I bought a whole quart yesterday at the grocery store, so we're ready.
Minter cheese for breakfast.
Yes.
All right, y'all. Thank y'all for being in here. This has by far been our best and largest group of people watching, and that's all because of Greg, and we know that. I wanted to start off with a bang with our first episode. We had Greg and Kumbo. First of the year, we wanted to do it again. We appreciate y'all. We love seeing y'all in chat and meeting you in person and all that. So, I guess next week we have, I think, Mr. Thomas Seward from the Pacific Northwest, Sasquatch Island. A lot of y'all have heard his name.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one.
So just y'all have a good weekend. Greg, I appreciate you, brother.
Hey, what I'm thinking about it, Night Owls 1313 to be Saturday night at 10 Central.
Yeah, we'll be there. Y'all, if you want some laughs or see how goofy we really are, I'm not even know if I'll be in chat at least. So y'all go check them out. They usually have a subject to talk about that lasts like 17 minutes, and then it's off the rails and we're laughing. So
yes.
So y'all, thank you.
Well, thanks for y'all having me, and enjoyed it. And maybe next time Amanda will get to talk a little more. Yeah. She's gonna have to come in.
I'm just sitting back enjoying the
show. Like now though that she knows some of this stuff, and she can come up with some questions for you.
Yeah.
Oh no, I got questions, but yeah, we're going on 2.5 hours now. We might save that for next time.
All right. Well, y'all, I'm fixing to hit the I'm out button. Y'all have a good weekend. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yep. Happy New Year. Big love.
Everybody. Thanks for
stopping by.
Down in the pines where the water runs black, where the moss hangs low and the night leans back. The stories whisper about a shadow tall, big feet moving where the moonlight falls. Some say it be, some say it ghost in the trees. Some say trouble blowing in with the breeze. But around here, man, we know the call, or we just call them friends of Squatchin Holler. So light that fire, let the cattails shake, hear the night birds cry and the copperheads wake. If you hear a howl in the Georgia fall, there ain't no wind and it ain't no dawn. When the creek runs cold and the shadows get taller, yeah, you cross a line in a Squatchin Holler where the legends walk and the brave men falter. Better mind your step in that Squatchin Holler. Yeah. So light that fire, let the swamp drum roll. You can hear that beats right down in your soul. If you hear a grunt from the river call, it ain't no bullfrog barking at all. When the swamp runs still and the crickets get softer, you're not alone in the Squatchin Holler, where the brave think twice and the fools won't fall. The Lord keep watch on that Squatchin Holler. Some say he guards at old Pine Ridge, some say he walks from bridge to bridge. But one thing's sure, when the night comes down, something big still calls this ground. So bank that fire, let the night get deep, let the willows whisper while the kudzu creeps. If you catch a glimpse through the midnight holler, just nod your head, don't scream.